Well, a very good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to Mercedes-AMG Motorsport's eRacing competition. It is round 3 of 9 of Season 3, and it's all change. We head 3 years into the future of our historical tour of some of the iconic Mercedes cars in the DTM. And of course, we head to a new track as well, to the Hungaroring. Of all places, a track which swerves and works hard to make those overtakes stick. But we'll go through all of those little details in a minute or so. My name is Jeff Kirk, and alongside me, as always, is Mr. Rob Wiesemuller. And Rob, we've seen the Hungaroring before. It was on the calendar last year, and it produced a great race as well.
Yeah, hello James, hello everyone who's watching from home. Third race of the Mercedes-AMG eRacing competition. Virtual racing competition run on RaceRoom Racing Experience. You can find the link in the description on YouTube if you want to join the competition, or alternatively on Facebook. You can go on the RaceRoom page. You can try to join as well, but here we've got the 18 fastest drivers who are fighting for the race win on the Hungaroring. And as you said, we already had this track on the calendar last year, and it was a great race, which was won by Jack Keithley.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a circuit which is very near and dear to my heart. You've got to, as I say, really attack the corners, not just to get the most speed in qualifying, but also to make overtakes stick. And it's historically been a very difficult track to overtake at, but more and more as we look at it in sim racing terms, at least, it seems that in these touring cars, you get a little bit more opportunity to. There's not so much dirty air to get into the slipstream and make a move into the main action points, which include turn 1 off the home finish straight. But let us turn our attentions away from the track for a little bit and to the cars which you see on your screen right now. For the past 2 rounds, we've enjoyed the wild ride that was the Mercedes Evo 2 from 1992. And as aforementioned, we now move 3 years into the future and to the Mercedes-AMG C-Class DTM from 1995.
Wo gehobelt wird, da fallen bekanntlich auch Späne.
So hopefully for those of you who were around in that time, that's giving you a bit of a refresher of the memory. Rob, this car in comparison to the Evo 2, it's almost like a supercar in comparison to the Evo 2, whereas with that you're sliding around trying to, hold on to the thing as it tries to throw you off the road. This is... there's so much more power behind it, but it's so much more planted as well with all the aero.
Yes, and I mean, at the time, this was certainly one of the most advanced racing cars there was. Because in 1995, this was one of the years where all the electronic devices were getting more and more important in racing, and this car had traction control, this car had ABS, but underneath it, it was an absolute beast. And it was a time where the DTM also got extremely expensive, turned into the ITC in the following year, got a World Championship status, was an international championship, and the costs really exploded, and it didn't work out at the time. But what we are greeted with here instead is one of the most awesome cars, in my opinion, that was ever built.
You just got to look at the race record there, isn't it? Over 70 races competed, over 30 of which the car has won. It's rather incredible to think that it's such a good track record in real life, and I'm fascinated to see actually how the sim racers are going to adapt to the challenge today here as well, because as I said before, it's a completely different style of car to the Evo 2, and it may very well end up suiting some of the drivers more than others. Perhaps it's time to take a little look at our field today.
Yeah, so here you can see 18 drivers once again on the grid, and a lot of familiar names, a lot of guys that were already in the first two races, but also a few new faces here on the Mercedes-AMG eRacing competition. Fastest driver in the pre-qualifying, that was not Andika Ramanolana, who's in the car with the number 2, but it was instead with the number 20 in the red car, Tim Hyneman, the reigning champion, who's doing his first race of the season.
Yeah, other names to consider, also Yarshall, Alex Dornington, the EWTCC champion, the Zengaffinen brothers, featuring for the first time this year. They were mid-tier staples last year in Season 2. It's good to see them back as well. Kunzer, of course, our championship leader, of which we will go through the standings in a little bit, and Shaposhnik as well, who made 1 or 2 appearances early season last year. Of course, Heinemann, I think, a lot to prove. Certainly the disgraced now 2 times champion after match fixing in a LAN event. Really, really poor form. But he's got a big task ahead of him coming into the season this late, Rob. Let's take a little look at the championship standings here. And Julian Kunzer, as I said, leading the way there on 40 points, ahead of today, of this year's surprise package, really. Andika Ramamalana taking his first, race win of the series. Actually, he's the first person from outside of Europe to win a race in the eRacing competition, which is wonderful stuff. Of course, you've got your regular contenders, Keithley, Rebenak in there, Tim Yarshall, another real young rising star looking to get into what is the top 5 for this year, to be in with a chance to take part in that finale at the Hungaroring.
And of course the final at the Hungaroring, that is the one thing that everyone's working for, because the 5 best drivers in this online championship here, they will qualify for the final event at the Hungaroring. Happens at the same time as the DTM final, so it will happen in October, and then they will race against the 6 Mercedes-AMG DTM drivers. And for the best 3 drivers, there's a Mercedes racing experience, so drive in a real high-end sports car from AMG, as a prize on the table. So that's pretty amazing. If you want to have a shot at the championship, you can join for free, of course, at RaceRoom. Like I mentioned before, all the links are in the description. And there are still a couple of rounds left, and we might actually have a look here at the calendar real quick before I get serious. Currently,
yeah, so of course... Well, no, go on, sorry, my apologies.
Currently at stage 3 at the Hungaroring here, and then the Norrisring, one of the tracks that was actually raced in 1995. The next round, the qualifiers already open at the Norrisring, and I think we've already seen around 2,000 drivers attempting to qualify for the next event. And then we move on, we've got the 2003 CLK coming up, 2005 C-Class, and well, almost the current car, the C63 from 2015 when Pascal Wehrlein in the championship.
Yeah, so the stints that we get with these cars are short and sweet, but that's the whole point of taking a little trip through 30 years of Mercedes-AMG DTM history, isn't it? We want a little taster from all these different cars, and it provides a different challenge for all of the drivers, of which we are now at the Hungaroring. I think these cars are actually going to really suit this circuit, being a bit more planted to the floor, being a little bit more powerful with turns which require the aerodynamics to be working at their optimum efficiency. Just going to take a little look round the Hungaroring now with Moritz Lerner, who's just coming up to turn 2 before we head into qualifying. And if you are new with us here for the first time this round, then it's worth saying that we have a 10-minute qualifying session first up after the practice session's finished here, followed up by a 20-minute race with no formation lap, no warming of the tyres. It's fast and furious in the MERC. So heading now through turn 4. It's a fast left-hander. You've got to clip the apex nicely there before we head through the long turn 5. You want to get on the power a little bit earlier than you really can there. And then it's on the power up to the difficult 6-7 chicane. Again, you want to get on the power earlier than you can there, and into one of my favourite sections of racing track in Europe. Turn 8 into turn 9, swinging onto the power before you're slightly off again into turn 10. And then slightly off again into turn 11. It's a real patience track. This one, it's one Lerner does not have enough patience for on this particular lap. He goes into the wall before the final sector, which is, of course, the 90-degree right-hander of 12. And then the long left-hander of 13 before the long right-hander of 14. As I say, a patience track, Rob. You really need to be on your A game to nail these apexes and extract the maximum amount of time out of these difficult corners.
We have Karen Sigi Revanak here. We managed to pick him up roughly at the same stage where Lerner just crashed his car. And that's one of the advantages of the eRacing competition. Of course, when you crash your car, you can just get a new one. Not quite as expensive as if you crash a real Mercedes-AMG DTM car. Final corner here, very difficult. Most drivers take narrow entry line, just a little bit wider to the outside than Sigi just did, and then accelerating out. You can see the counter steering. And what I heard from a lot of drivers is that these cars do have traction control, but a lot of drivers do not want to use traction control setting in the race because they think they can actually do it a little bit quicker than the traction control with their own feet.
Of course, the traction control it does what it says on the tin. It helps, you know, control your pace out of corner. It helps make sure that the grip is there so you can get on the accelerator quicker, but it does have those drawbacks. I can totally understand why a lot of these drivers are turning it off, and it wouldn't surprise anyone, I don't think, that none of the drivers that qualified used traction control on their fastest lap. You know, it's as simple as that. It's that, you know, it's that little bit extra, which if you can learn to overcome it, then you're going to be able to get the best amount of time.
So when I actually tried it myself, in the hot lap qualifier, and I managed to do my best time with the traction control set on 10%. So it's certainly different.
Oh, really?
Different types of strategies. Also with the setup here, of course, you can change the setup, and the wing is also quite interesting here. It's generally a track where you can run a little bit higher wing compared to other tracks as we move into the qualifying session.
So 10 minutes on the clock to set a fastest lap. And of course, as Rob has already mentioned, there's no need to return to the pits or anything. If you feel that your lap or your preparation isn't good enough, you can just escape out on track. That'll transport you back to the garage, and you can go out again. But of course, the one caveat with this is that once that 10-minute timer is up, that's it. Session over. No finishing your lap, no starting a new one just after you've crossed the line with 1 second to go. 10 minutes is your lot, and so the drivers really have to take advantage of the short session time as we head through turn 4 now. It's going to be fascinating to see, Rob, who comes out on top here. We've had two different pole sitters at the first two races. Of course, Kunstler taking pole position at Hungaroring, and Jack Keithley, the man who has taken the most pole positions in the history of the eRacing competition, taking pole position at the Lausitzring, of course, not converting it into a win, though. So we already know from this season, pole isn't everything, but it's obviously a very nice starting place on the grid.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting who's going to be on the pole position here, because Jack Keithley, I would say he's one of the favorites, especially on the Hungaroring, to take the pole position. But it's a brand new car, so we've got almost no reference data that we can look at. Only the qualifier, the leaderboard qualifier, and Tim Hyneman was the fastest guy in the leaderboard qualifier, and I think he was also the fastest guy in the practice session, because he's currently showing up at the first position Here you can see it at the bottom of your screen. So
Yeah.
maybe he returns to the championship in an impressive fashion.
Well, let's look at the stats, shall we? He's a two-time champion of the eRacing competition. Given season 1 was one event, but the guy clearly has pace. I think what has been developed over the past year, and especially in the past couple of months, though, is a real distaste of the man inside his cockpit. There's no denying he is a talented boy with a lot of pace. But, you know, there's just things that he does which puts him in a very, very bad light. No less than, of course, the match-fixing incident that happened at the EWTCR launch event just last month. It would not surprise me to see drivers, even if they're starting behind him, getting elbows out from the beginning, just because they don't want him to win. But of course, Tim Hyneman, if he's fast enough, he doesn't need to battle anyone to win, doesn't he? A purple first sector, looking very good for the German so far.
Yeah, he's certainly one of the guys who's, you know, living on the edge. He's not making a lot of friends in the paddock with the style that he's driving, and also some of the other actions in his championships. But it also has to be mentioned, he's the two-time winner of this competition, and this talent is undoubted. He gets led through by, I think that was Jaschel, in the black car there, the car that was used by Jörg van Ommen in the DTM season 1995, and now he heads into the final sector. Looked like a pretty decent lap. See a lot of oversteer here, but that's kind of his driving style. Once again, gets the rear out, turn the car, driving it a lot on the throttle and, you know, by sliding a little bit. I think that was a bit too wide, but gets a good run now onto the straight. Just goes onto the curve with two wheels there, that's fine within the track limits. And at 1:43.8, faster than his pre-qualifying time.
That's ridiculous. We were looking at 44s, maybe low 44s for provisional pole, but that is some benchmark from Hyneman and Alexander Dorniden, who of course makes his first appearance in the Mercedes eRacing competition for, oh goodness, I want to say just about a year now at this point. He was in P3 just before being usurped by Kevin Singer-Rebenak, and what do you know, Jack Keithy's there in fourth as well. All the usual contenders, Rob, appearing at the top. We may not have a reference point for this car in particular, but there is certainly no doubting that when a guy is fast, he'll probably be faster than anything.
Well, Joe Cortese, for example, he's in 5th position. And what you might notice is that there's only 11 times in, but we have 18 drivers on the server. And that brings us to another topic, and that is the cut track rules here on the circuit. Because if you cut the track, if you go too far out in the corners, and that means all four wheels off the track and the curbs count as the track surface, that will invalidate your lap automatically. So, see Kunze, and I just skipped to the other drivers here to find someone who's on the lap, and they all seem to pick up this, you know, these cut track warnings here. And in the qualifying session, you will delete your lap time automatically, and in the race, if you do it too aggressively, you will get a slowdown penalty. So that means your car, it will not happen immediately, but your car will not accelerate after you go for the first time on the brakes. The next time you accelerate, it won't do this 100% in order to provide a fair competition for all the drivers. And it wasn't really a factor on any of the other tracks so far, but here on the Hungaroring, where you have almost exclusively tarmac runoff areas, it will be a big factor.
Well, like I say, this is a patience track, Rob, and these drivers are competitive. They will run out of patience quicker than you will ever believe, audience. They will want to push as much out of the car as possible, and sometimes it goes over the edge. Someone who's not going over the edge, though, is Manuel Sengaffinen, who's been readily impressive there in P5, and he's ahead of the likes of Kunze and Maulana, the guys who are 1 and 2 in the championship. They're only P7 and P9 at the moment, with is that just under 4 minutes to go already?
Yeah, and look at the gap from Hyneman to Rebenak. It's crazy. It's over half a second, and we've not ever seen such a big gap in the eRacing competition, not even close.
That is, I'm shocked by how quickly this qualifying session has gone. I'm shocked by how big, sorry, that gap remains. It's very impressive from Tim Hyneman, and time running out now for these guys to even set a lap at this point. Even if you get a slow down penalty, Rob, is it worth just taking the hit and getting yourself a position on the grid, perhaps?
Usually you do a qualifying session like this, that you try to get a safe lap in your first lap, and then you can push from that point onwards. And for someone like Andrés Santos, who's sitting here in 17th place and who does not have a second sector time, you can see it below his name there at the bottom of your screen, that's bad news. Because he only has one more lap to even set a time, to even get a starting position here. Jarschel in 16th.
Yeah.
And Löhner
Bayrick in 14th.
Yeah, Löhner is the other guy who has not set a lap time yet.
There's Rahal moving up into 9th position. That deposes Maulana down to 10th. Honzik's improved. He's up to P8, so that's a decent result for the Czech driver, who's not really captured his Season 2 form just yet, down in 9th in the standings. Julian Zengafinen to improve here, maybe move up alongside his brother. Oh, that's very wide at the final corner though, isn't it? And if he's got enough fuel in the tank, he'll be able to do one more lap. Moritz Lerner going in ahead of him there in P12. Will Zengafinen be able to jump back up? No, he remains in P13.
And Siggy on a good lap, but not quite as fast as Hyneman, and we have seen no purple sectors at all in this session after Tim Hyneman put this benchmark on. And if he's looking for to redeem himself here, he's doing everything that he can. Let's see.
It's going to take a lot. Go on. It's going to take a long time to redeem himself, Rob. Let's be fair. As Kevin Siggy Rebenak comes across the line and does improve, he gets to within 3/10 of Hyneman. But that is his lap done and dusted now. What about Maulana? Oh, that goes very wide. And is that? Wow, he got away with that, didn't he? He's going to have to improve somewhat, though. If he can get ahead of Kunzer, actually, that'll be a good start. Because we know Maulana's had brilliant launches off the line as well. So the higher up he can get, the better his prospects are going to look straight away from that one.
In the last minute of the qualifying session now, and in RaceRoom.
Oh, look at Santos there, who got up to P4.
Wow, and that's on his only lap. The only lap where his time counted. He goes into 4th. Nice job. Maulana into 9th.
That's still not great, is it? I'm Kunzer. Honzik down to P10. Is there anyone else out on track?
Siggy's on a good lap. Zengafinen is also on a good lap. We're just watching Siggy here in the car that Bernd Schneider drove when he won the championship in 1995. Very nice first sector. But yeah, I'm surprised about Kunze actually, only down in 8th. He's back in the pits, so it's over for him.
This is the difference in car, isn't it? As there's Zengafinen there, Julian crossing the line to go into P13. It's the difference in car. Maybe it just doesn't suit Kunze and Maulana as much as everyone else.
Either way, this man here, he takes the championship. Zengafinen in 3rd, wow.
Just before the line as well. Goodness me, well look at that grid then. So Tim Hyneman takes his first pole position of the season, his 6th of his career, ahead of Kevin Siggy Rebenak, unfortunately always the bridesmaid it seemed. But what an effort from Manuel Zengafinen to go up into P3 ahead of the likes of Keithley, Kunze and Maulana. No breath to take that in though, because we're only 40 seconds away from the race's start.
Yes, 20 minutes of racing coming up, and that's it. You can see the cars here lining up on the grid. Silver car, yellow mirrors, that's Kevin Siggy Rebenak. Blue car, yellow mirrors. In the background there, that's Andrés Santos. And Zengafinen in the red car with the black mirrors. Red car and red mirrors, that's Tim Hyneman. Will line up on the grid shortly. Starting on the pole position here for this race. There you can see him.
Yeah, this big chance for Zengafinen and Santos to score points. Of course, Santos with a good score in the first round. Not so great in the second round. And what of Hyneman? Will he get a good launch? Will he have to battle at all? We're going to find out with 20 minutes of racing to go. It's off and away at the Hungaroring, and it is a good start from Hyneman. It's a really poor start, actually, from Kevin Siggy Rebenak, already down to 3rd. And who's this going for the lead? Is this Zengafinen going for the lead? Yes, it is, as they go 3 wide into turn 1, and it looks like Santos has stolen the march on Siggy Rebenak as well, although going towards turn 2 now. It looks as if Revenac's going to be on the inside, but a fantastic launch here from Manuel Zengaffinen. It's a red car, 1 and 2. That's look at Dorniden going up the inside of Santos there. That's a great little move from the German who's making his way up the order. Kunter and Honzik, they've had good starts. They're up to 6th and 7th. Maulana as well, up to 8th. And the Zengaffinens must have some sort of voodoo gearing, because Julian's up to P9 as well from well outside the top 10. So who's lost out there? He's down to P14. I'm guessing he might have been involved in some sort of contact.
I think he was punted by one of the blue cars there, but we couldn't quite see it. It was just at the edge of the screen, and Zengaffinen makes a mistake. And that's Siggy through, and that's Dorniden as well. He has now the outside, but I think Dorniden will take the position here. So Dorniden up into 3rd position.
It's really good opportunistic driving from the pair of them, and it just goes to show in the MERC, if you make a small mistake, you are more than likely going to be punished for it. Emmanuel Zengaffinen up at the sharp end of the grid for the first time, learning it first half. Wow! My words collapsed because he actually made a really decent move up the inside of turn 12 there, taking the podium back. Dorniden, who gives him a little tap on the left rear as we head through turn 13. And into turn 14 now we go. The final corner, Dorniden goes wide. Is that going to allow Santos through? Not for now. At the end of lap 1 though, 18 minutes of racing left. It's Hyneman who leads from Revenac, Manuel Zengaffinen, Dorniden, Santos, Kunze, Honzik, Maulana, Julian Zengaffinen, and Lerner rounding out the top 10.
In the background, that's Honzik. Oh, Zengaffinen runs wide. That's Dorniden through, and I think it might be Santos through. Not quite.
Making too many mistakes to take a podium today, isn't he? Although he remains on the outside here, getting also close. But is this going to allow Santos through now around the outside of turn 3? No, actually Santos gets onto the grass a little bit. Manuel's let off yet again.
The Euronics gaming drivers here very close to each other. Santos ahead of his teammate Kunze, who's leading the championship. I think Zengaffinen had a great start, but he's certainly struggling a little bit here in the opening laps.
Reminds me a little bit of Xanatos from last time out of the Lausitz ring. It's a guy we're not used to seeing up the sharp end of things, who might end up making a couple of mistakes just because he's a little nervous perhaps, or maybe the setup's not as good as it should be. As, his brother Julian there with a really opportunistic move on Antika Rama Maulana, the Indonesian, down in P9 for the moment, or sorry, P8 for the moment, I should say. These guys are feisty, mind. They're fighting for their positions.
Certainly they do. And not the race that Maulana hoped for there. In the background, Weirich and I think that's Lerner side by side. Lerner just about stays ahead, goes sideways here into the penultimate corner, and Lucas Buron, he wants his first point of the season in the blue green car in the background, lurking there.
It's probably worth saying as well for those who have, for those of you who've not joined us in the Mercedes-AMG racing competition so far this season. First of all, welcome. In terms of the race and the point structure, it's standard affair. The top 10 scoring points, 25 for first down.
3 wide!
And that's a ridiculously great dive from Lucas Buron. He took everyone by surprise, and he's gained 2 positions out of it, unless, of course, Weirich's able to stay ahead. He tries, but wow! That was a move and a half from Lucas Buron, who...
and we lost Weirich. I think Weirich made another mistake there. Probably got a little bit sideways, and that was a tough scene. Lerner was just slammed out of the way there by Weirich. I'm not sure if Weirich was hit by Buron first, or if he went into Lerner on his own.
Buron put his body as the door was closing, wasn't he? Which I don't think is fair, as Zengaffinen back ahead of Dorniden.
Oh, and Dorniden's dropping back. What happened to Dorniden? There he is.
Oh, slow down penalty. Slow down penalty. It must be.
He's right now in the middle of this midfield battle here.
Wow. So he's dropped from 3rd to 11th.
And that's what happens if you just push a little bit too hard. Lerner, they're going to the outside. In the background, Cortesi, I think, also trying to find position here. Oh, and Dorniden will be so disappointed with that.
He's on for a very good point score in his first round since last year. He may yet recover. Of course, there's just under 15 minutes of this race left. But for Manuels and Gaffin, it's almost like the racing gods are gifting a podium to him. It's like, oh, you've fallen out. No, let's get it back to you. He's got to take the gifts that he's being given here and running with it. As Jack Heatley, he's not really running with it at the moment, is he? The man who's currently third in the championship, scrapping away for P14, and he's up into P13 now, past Tim Yarshall, keep in mind, who's also in that battle. As further up the order, look at Matt Lana looking to move his way past Jaroslav Honzik.
Oh, and Honzik's around.
He's able to do that as Honzik's round. And oh, he hits the wall hard. And is that going to be him out the top 10 now as well? Indeed it is. And just like that, these small mistakes, Rob, they're costing people massively today.
I think he got a little help there coming out of the corner. But it doesn't get easier to drive this car on the edge. In the background, there's Yarshall, and he got tapped as well by Cortese. So the racing a lot more rough than we saw in the first two races here, and also the car's a lot more slidey at this stage of the race.
I think it's kind of bookmarked by the fact that we actually have our first time of the day in Daniel Sharanku. It looked like he retired on the first lap, perhaps, which is a shame. As Sigi Rebenak's taken the lead.
Oh.
And I wonder whether Tim Hyneman has just picked up a time penalty as well, because he was a few seconds out in front as Santos is in to third, and he's gotten past St. Gaffin, and it's all changed. In the podium position, Santos manoeuvres his way past Manuel Zengaffinen, but for Hyneman, either a mistake or a time penalty. It's allowed Kevin Sigi Rebenak, a man who's never won before in the MERC, to take the lead of the Hungaroring.
That's crazy, because Hyneman had such a big gap.
It was how long? 4 or 5 seconds, wasn't it? I think I last saw it at.
Yeah, it was a huge gap. Now there's a mistake from Virus, who loses the position to Dawn, even who's back up into 9th.
As I said, he's got time to work his way back through the order. Speaking of which, it's worth keeping an eye on P5, Rob, because Julian Kunze is up into P5, up into that position now, which would be a good recovery drive, mind. But what Andre Santos here now? Santos, he had a really poor round last time out at the Lausitz ring, and he seemed back on form in Hockenheim. And I say back on form because, of course, Santos is one of the first people in the AMG racing competition to take a podium in that one race that comprised of Season 1.
Sorry to interrupt you, but look how wild these cars are. And I think some of the drivers must have made a mistake by putting their hot lap setups on here for the race. Because these cars are sliding around like crazy. Well, especially Kunze. We don't know this from Kunze, that he's so wild with this car. Usually he's one of the more conservative drivers.
Is that the true effect of having... Well, you don't have to race without traction control, evidently, but these people, these drivers feel it necessary to turn it off to get the most pace. And it's clearly showing, because they're throwing these cars around almost as wildly as the Evo 2s 2 weeks ago.
I mean, if Hyneman comes around and just puts a 43 into the tarmac, you might feel a little bit threatened, and you might want to repeat at the same time. And that's when you put on the extreme setup.
Heading down into turn 1 then with these guys. As I was saying previously, Santos, he took that podium in the only race of Season 1. He has not taken a podium since. I'm sure he would be over the moon if he was to take one here in Season 3. Don't count out the battle for this lead just yet. We saw how fast Hyneman was. And I genuinely think Kevin Sigi Rebenak is taking it safely, because you see how much Hyneman has caught up already. I said that we might not see him battle today, Rob.
It looks like
I think he's going to
have a slowdown penalty here as well, because he just lost a second.
That was... Yeah.
When he's going very wide over the curb as well. And that really puts Hyneman back into it.
Fascinating, isn't it? We might have to see Hyneman battle in the end, as Vierik there makes his way past Lucas Baron, who, again, he's looking for his first point of the season, and Keithley moves his way past Lerner as well, you'll notice, into P11, so Keithley just on the edge of the points, and the British driver, he's having a really checkered campaign this time around, Rob, isn't he? Taken out, not by his own accord, of course, at the Hockenheim ring. Back on form at the Lausitz ring, but unable to take that win. And now all the way down in P11. Again, it seems by no...
Buron and Bayerich there in the foreground. Buron's looking racy. That's the most racy we've seen. Wow, nice move.
Nice move. That is taking the opportunity when it presents itself, as Honzik falls further down the order. And Honzik's had a nightmare race, down to P17 now.
And Chiranko already out. Cortesi losing a position to Yashel. Then Hyneman in the lead in the first corner.
Yeah, that would have been a move down into turn 1, and that was going to be honest. He's got that much pace advantage. And look at Kevin Rebenak, who's going to try and push his way down the inside. And that is exactly what I meant. People are not going to give Hyneman the time of day anymore. It doesn't matter. Hyneman is ahead now. He's just got to try and stay on the black stuff this time.
And I'm not sure how hard Kevin Rebenak will really fight this. We'll run out of the top 10 meanwhile. I'm not sure where to look in this race. We're just going to take a look back here.
P9 now.
Yeah, Dorneden 8th again, and Buron side by side with Lerner here. Oh, contact!
Oh! And that is his chance of gone.
Oh, he must be careful there when he re-enters the track. Honzik is through now, so Chiranko already out of the race. He's now in the last position of the people who are still running in this race.
So, it is just over 8 minutes remaining. It is Hyneman who leads once again, despite a slowdown penalty from Kevin Rebenak. Santos rounding out at the podium, looking to score his first one since 2016, would you believe? Manuel Zengafinen, he's had a really weird race in and out of the podium positions, but it's still a strong one for the Swiss driver in P4. They're followed by Kunze Malana, his brother Julian Zengafinen, and then Dorneden, Keithley and Lerner currently rounding out the final point scorers. Although, to be fair, that point could go to anyone, Rob. Cortesi and Bayerich lurking.
It's looking so strong for Lucas Buron for quite some time here. That in the second half of the race he has dropped back, and now the tires will come into play. Tire wear quite a bit bigger here than in the 1992 cars, because these cars get shorter races. So and also we can see the drivers really pushing it. Cortesi
finds his way down the inside.
Yeah.
Well, the advantage that Lerner will have here is he's now on the inside of turn 2. Oh, look, the switch back. And then the switch other back from Cortesi's all over the rear end of Moritz Lerner. But Lerner's a very experienced driver, Rob, isn't he? He wasn't able to qualify for the Lausitz ring, but he's back today and showing exactly why he's a serial point scorer.
See Cortesi almost getting airborne there over the curb. Still pushing very hard, and we are stepping out once again, especially with the black car in the background. That's Yashel, who's been a little bit all over the place in this race. Not his usual form.
Well, we were saying before the broadcast started, we were looking at the championship standings, and we were saying, okay, it's probably down to the top 6 at this point, from Kunze down to Malana, Keithley, Rebenak, and then Yashel and Bayerich. Both of those last two aren't even scoring points today. Santos in the podium position.
Yeah,
Hyneman, of course, scoring a win. And Zengafinen, yeah. So all of a sudden, those 3 drivers have put themselves right back into contention for the top 5.
Absolutely, and of course Tim Hyneman, we kind of knew that we can't count him out, because he has won this championship 2 times in a row.
Yeah.
But with Santos and Zengafinen, that's a little bit of a surprise, especially because Andre Santos mentioned to me for the race that he's struggling a little bit with this car. He feels much more confident in the modern DTM cars with more downforce. That's not showing in the race here. He's doing a great job.
No. And if he's doing this well in these older cars, it suggests from his words that he's going to get better as the championship continues.
Yeah, also, this livery that he's racing in, that's my absolute favorite DTM livery. You see the engine there, it's painted onto the engine cover. Very nice. Bayerich drops 1 further position back behind Yashel, and Yashel takes him back. They must be very close together. Yes. Bayerich playing with the track limits there.
These guys, they kind of have to stick it out now, see whether anybody falls outside of the top 10, which is still entirely possible. You know, there still could be a crash to be had with 5 or just under 5 minutes left now of this race to go. We're probably looking at 3-4 more laps, including the end of this one, as Yarshall looks to get onto a mistake from Weirich, but is unable to.
They might get into the points. Who knows what will happen ahead of them. Seen enough action in this race already. Once again, Weirich. Weirich is really loose at the moment. He cuts off Yarshall there very late. Yarshall will just go around the outside, I think.
Yeah.
See who comes out ahead. It's Yarshall in the black car.
That was a weird jump from Honzik. Must have skipped the timing beam or something. He's back down into 16. Which is a shame, as I say, still unable to capture that Season 2 form, which saw him up into the top 6. As Julian Kunze, well, he's had a quiet race, slowly picking off championship runners ahead of him. Next on his list will be the mightily impressive Manuel Zengaffinen, and he makes a dive down the inside. Zengaffinen going to try and hold on around the outside, which he does do with aplomb. That's great defending from the Switch driver. It looks like Julian's going to have to try a slightly different tactic if he wants to make his way up into P4. Though, that said, he has done with the cutback. I wonder whether Zengaffinen got a penalty there. Kunze up into P4.
Yeah, that certainly looked like a slowdown penalty. You can see just the same move by Dawn even against the other Zengaffinen. So both of them losing places at at the same corner. And it was great driving by Zengaffinen because he gave Kunze room as he almost loses the car here. But yeah, then just was on the wrong line for the next corner, and you really need to be on the outside to take the right-hander flat out. Zengaffinen was a little bit too far on the inside, and then of course picked up the slowdown penalty on the exit.
That's really good news for Kunze, who, if my quick maths doesn't fail me now, should mean that he remains in the lead of the championship. Of course, to be fair, the online championship is mostly provided at this point. As long as you're in the top 5, you qualify for the live finale. But obviously, you want to win the championship, don't you, in the online stage of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think these drivers, they want to win every single race.
Cortese
for the single point for 10th position here.
Gonna go side by side with Lerner then.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, it's look how defensive Lerner feels he needs to go. Cortese gets into the slipstream. Lerner moves back into the middle of the track. There we go. Got my words out eventually, and he takes the corner nicely as well. It's a great scrap between these two. A lot of respect shown. But as I've said before, Lerner has that experience, and he's able to... Oh! He gets bumped out the way by Cortese. And I wonder whether he broke a little bit early. Either way, oh, there we go. Cortese actually slowing down to allow Lerner back through. That's some really good, gentlemanly driving from the Spaniard. As we head up to turn 4 now, there's not going to be much opportunity into here. And indeed, no, although he's going to try and get the undercut here as we head into turn 5. No, Lerner holds on still.
Pushing a bit too hard, as we said. A little bit too early on the throttle there in the corner, but in the background, Yarshall did exactly the same way.
I reckon we're gonna, well, there's no reckoning about it. There'll be one more lap after this ultimate one is completed, and fair play to Sigi Rebenak. Actually, he's been able to hold on to Hyneman a lot better in this second part of the race than previously, but I also wonder whether it's helped contributed by Hyneman just being a little bit more careful, because another slowdown penalty, and that's Sigi right past again.
And I think Hyneman, he can drive conservatively now on this last lap, because there's just no way, unless he picks up a slowdown penalty, that Sigi Rebenak can do anything on the lead of the German driver driving for turn 1 esports. And it must be said also that Hyneman definitely showed superior pace compared to the rest of the field here on the Hungaroring.
Like, ominously so.
Not taking it easy just yet.
No, he can't afford to make those types of mistakes, can he? Let's talk about the man in second as well. Kevin Sigi Rebenak, ever the consistent performer, but never the top performer, Rob. He's doing what he needs to qualify for the top 5, but when will that win?
Race in the eRacing competition yet.
Nor taking the pole position.
He He's been second in the championship last year, both online and in the final.
You have to do something as Lerner here, still holding on to that final point position from Cortese. It's going to be difficult, I think, for Cortese to overtake him now. The last opportunity really will be turn 12, although off the inside. He tries, but to no avail. And I think we've got to go back up to the front now as coming around the final corners will be the lead as well. Certainly in my books, and certainly in the books of a lot of others, he's got a long way to go before people begin to respect Tim Hyneman again. But his speed cannot be doubted. He takes his first win of the season, his 5th in the eRacing competition's history. And it is followed home by Kevin Siggy-Rebenak, who picks up yet another podium, his 6th in the eRacing competition, his 2nd of the season. And what of Andres Santos? He comes home in 3rd. He picks up his first podium since 2016. What sweet relief for the German. Julian Kunze holds on to 4th position to maintain the lead of the championship. Manuel Zengaffinen, what a great drive from the Swiss after a strong qualifying to come home in his best finishing position in the eRacing competition, P5. Maulana picks up some solid points as well in P6 there with Dorniden. I can't even read who's in 8th.
Julian Zengaffinen in 8th. Keith in 9th, and Lerner rounding out the top 10 and rounding out the points positions.
Just holding off Cortese as well. That was well earned.
Yeah, and quite an interesting race. Quite an interesting race for the first time in 1995 cars here at the Hungaroring.
Yeah, they're interesting beasts, aren't they? They're clearly, especially with the traction control off, just as difficult to handle. But I guess the biggest takeaway is that we've seen a lot more slowdown penalties, and they've affected the race a lot more. So clearly these guys are wanting to push harder in the cars, but they're simply not able to, at least not at the Hungaroring. If they were to try that sort of stunt at the Norrisring, which we head to in 3 weeks' time, Rob, they're going to find a wall in their way.
Yes, the Norrisring, always one of the most spectacular races on the calendar. You can see a lot of action, and yeah, you can still qualify if you want to. Follow the links in the description to RaceRoom if you want to give it a try. And maybe you are on the grid for the next race. We'll just go back for the calendar real quick here. So Norrisring Time Attack is open until the 17th of June, and then on the 24th, once again on a Sunday, we are back live here on the Mercedes-Benz channels for the next race of the Mercedes-AMG Motorsport eRacing competition.
Yeah, it's the longest break that we've had, so you've got an extra week to try and get your laps in. Or if you're just interested in spectating, you got an extra week to find something else to do, start a new hobby or something. But make sure that you are back here on the 24th of June for round 4 at the Norrisring. It is sure to be entertaining.
Yeah, you can already see here on the slideshow some pictures that we took during testing, and yeah, I can tell you there will be even more action on the Norrisring, always the most spectacular race on the calendar of the real DTM, and also here in the eRacing competition.
Make sure you are there with us when we arrive at the Norrisring then. Thank you all so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed yourselves in this sim racing stream on the RaceRoom Racing Experience. A big thank you to my co-caster, Rob V. Simula, for doing the camera work as well. This stream would not be anywhere near as wonderful as it is without him. I've been James Kirk, and from all of us here, it is a very warm goodbye.